Alright guys, Scrappy again today. Hope you're doing well and enjoying your day so far. A huge day in the history of competitive Call of Duty. Yesterday as one of the all-time greats in SlasheR officially decides to hang up the sticks and retire for good. He explains how the CDL has contributed to this decision in recent years. Lots of reaction from former and current pros, especially Dashy, because he is now, remarkably enough, the oldest player remaining in the league. Very much enjoy your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new. As always, we've got a lot of roster stuff to get into today. We are going to begin with what Zinni is referring to, and that is kind of what kicked off this whole situation with the whole Neum stuff. So, Ronnie confirms yesterday this is going to happen. Now, the Ghost of Hope's tweet, as we talked about yesterday, there's a bit of nuance in what he was saying, but he did imply that Neum was coming in for Kenny. Now, maybe he didn't apply that was happening with immediate effect, but certainly that does seem to be part of the plan right now for the Los Angeles Thieves. But Ronnie says he's joining Thieves as a sub. Now, Zinni puts this out there, GM Zinni, because as we know, given the fact that Neum was on the Huntsman, there was a deal potentially to be done, especially given what Ronnie says on the matter. In a shocking turn of events last night, LA Thieves made their move for Neum, a player who was just hours away from finalising a loan deal to another CDL franchise from OpTic or Huntsman. So this was going to be like a loan arrangement, which is, it is allowed now in the COD League. I think the first couple of years it wasn't really a thing, but now it is a possibility again. Fortunately for Neum, while he had signed the new contract. This is kind of what we're talking about with Mercules. Look, he hadn't signed anything with Cloud9, but he wasn't a million miles away from potentially doing so when OpTic swooped in. This time it's different, but Thieves clearly decided they did not want to miss out on potentially another very promising AR player. They missed the boat on a Lurqxx, as we talked about last night. By the time they talked to Rafi and Omid, he'd already signed to FaZe. They didn't want to make that happen this time, but they nearly managed to miss the boat again, because by the time they were speaking with OpTic about getting Neum from the Huntsman, he'd already signed his side of the bargain with Ravens, but OpTic had not yet quite finalised that deal on their ends. It looks like that would have been happening in the coming hours, but because they didn't get that all sorted in time and LA Thieves reached out just at the right moment, whether this was, you know, OpTic just maybe thinking that somebody else might be interested and just holding off a few hours just in case Thieves might be interested, but it all worked out at the end, obviously, because Thieves, they were going to win this bidding war if it was required, and well, it's very interesting what it means for Kenny especially, because with the situation on FaZe with a Lurqxx, look, Simp is not going anywhere, but theoretically, any of 04, Abuzah or Drazah could potentially be on the chopping block if one of them underperforms. Right now, you're looking at Drazah. He's had a difficult start to the season. I don't really expect that to continue, to be honest. So I think that it's going to be interesting what it means for FaZe, because let's say 04 starts to really struggle. Theoretically, Drazah could switch to a sub, or he's done that in the past. Maybe a Lurqxx could even give that a go. But a Lurqxx will probably like to step into the slaying AR role, potentially alongside Abuzah. But, you know, it's possible if Abuzah really starts to struggle, which I don't expect. But we don't know who would be replaced on FaZe if once a Lurqxx gets the visa stuff sorted. Whereas on Thieves, if Neum is coming in as a sub, it's pretty straightforward, right? Like, Scrap, HyDra, aBeZy, they are not at risk. It's really only Kenny who would be at risk here, which makes things a little bit more concerning for him. We'll talk about them more later today. Now, given the fact the Ravens didn't get Neum, they needed another AR player, and this year Exceed has switched from a sub to an AR and has done a pretty damn good job with it so far. Honestly, you've got to respect Exceed and the tenacity of this guy, right? Because yes, he might have thrown up some Burger King cards in the CDL, but he's still stuck at it. He's had a good mentality about it, and he's fought his way back. Look, would Exceed have been, at least in my head, if you're not got Neum, would he have been the next down my list of players to sign? Probably not. But Ravens obviously think that he can do a job for them. And look, another player, he's had previous stints in the league, some of which have not gone especially well for sure. But he's now getting another opportunity. I thought this graphic was kind of funny because it almost looks like a kind of, you know, fly high type graphic with all the birds in the background and he's coming out of the clouds here. But no, he's still very much with us, and Exceed will be joining the Ravens. He obviously plays in just a couple of days' time on Friday against the Heretics. So yeah, pretty surprising one. And I think that people are talking about Brack and other players as well. You know how it goes. Exceed has also been a player when he has not received an opportunity that he might have have hoped for. He's hit the timeline. Often this happens. And, well, Serge Casbo here says, aBeZy deserves another shot, but you gotta think that Brack also deserves to get called up. Brack even comes in the replies and kind of says, when will it be my time? But I think, like, in my head, I would have probably had Brack above aBeZy in my list of AR players to look at, but hopefully aBeZy does well in the Pro League this time around. The other story, though, and of course the big one of yesterday, was, well, the hardest choices take the strongest wills or whatever. Thanos is calling it a day, and SlasheR retires. Look, over the last few days, it's becoming increasingly clear that the Neum for SlasheR thing was probably going to mean the end of SlasheR's competitive career. I was a little bit, not surprised maybe, but I thought he would maybe like to stick it out until the major and play on LAN, but then I guess if he feels like he's struggling, the team is struggling, he's going to turn up to Major 1, bomb out top 12, like what does that really do, right? Look, SlasheR's always been one of the best LAN players of all time in the Call of Duty League. The CDL, I mean, in the Call of Duty League, I said, really, I mean the entire history of competitive Call of Duty, much before the CDL as well. The way the CDL has gone has changed things. There's much more online COD. I'll share what SlasheR has to say about that in a second, because that definitely contributed to this decision. We know that SlasheR on that team with Nero, with Craze, with Lurqxx, it never felt like the type of team that SlasheR was going to be especially motivated to lead, especially because they were probably never going to really be that good. So as he comes out and says, Call of Duty community, over the holiday break, I've made one of the toughest decisions I've ever had to make. I'm officially retiring from competitive Call of Duty. Due to the timing of my decision, I didn't have the chance to make a video going in depth with my reasons, so I figured it'd be best to write something for you all to hear it from me first. I love the game, and anyone who knows me truly understands I lived for the competition. I always strive to be the hardest worker in the room, as it fueled my confidence knowing I was more prepared than my opponent. However, as of late, the game and the current CDL format does not inspire the same level of excitement I once had for playing competitive COD. I'd love to stay involved in the community in some way, but as of right now, I don't know what the future holds. Thanks to my teammates, competitors, fans for making it a very special journey, and to his friends and family as well. So yeah, this, I don't know, hit kind of hard to me. Like SlasheR, ever since I've been following competitive Call of Duty, SlasheR has been a part of the scene. And for those of you who've followed the channel a while, you'll know that SlasheR is one of my absolute all-time favourite players. I think this comes from, at least in part, the first event that I went to overseas. I went to Anaheim in 2019. SlasheR won that event. Remember, like, we were in the Hilton bar at Anaheim, and SlasheR was just coming out the bathroom, and I was like, congrats, and he gave me a fist bump or whatever. I just thought, okay, this is a quality player. And I just think as well, SlasheR's approach to the game has always been very commendable. I think he was ahead of the curve in many respects. Him and JCap to a degree in terms of their mentality. As he says, being the hardest worker in the room, getting the absolute most out of the talent that the players on his team had. I mean, that SlasheR, John, aBeZy, and JCap team, that Envy team during those Jetpack years, you know, I loved watching that team. They were such an exciting roster. Of course, they won the World Championship on my favourite game, Black Ops 3 as well, so that might be slightly part of it. And undoubtedly, SlasheR has an awful lot of talent as a player and is undisputedly one of the greatest ARs ever, but I think he absolutely got more out of his career than some players have with arguably more talent. I think that's what's so commendable about what SlasheR did, was achieving so much with so many different organizations and teammates and players over time. And even in the Call of Duty League, this was true. I mean, the victory with Los Angeles Guerrillas at Major 2 a few years ago was out of this world as well. Obviously, then he gets the opportunity on FaZe. I actually think he was better on FaZe than people give him credit for, really. I think the Drazah, though, did make more sense as an option for the following year, but if they'd stuck it out as a team, if they'd got just slightly better results, and I think that SlasheR and Cellium just didn't work especially well. I still think SlasheR was a real asset for that team. But to go through some of the Lion Man cards of his career, this was the World Championship winning Lion Man card from way back in Black Ops 3, of course. This is when he was on the Black Ops 400 Thieves roster. This is how his career looked at that moment. His LAN record is very undisputable, right? I think I remember it was the Boston event, 2024. Yeah, it must have been, because he was off FaZe, then he joined Boston. They were struggling online. They got bopped out of their own tournaments, top 12 in the first round of losers. But SlasheR had like a 1.3, and I bumped into him on the stairs, and he was like, look, online COD is not real, right? Like, this is actually real COD. That was always SlasheR's mentality, and moving away from that over the last few years, I think SlasheR's end of his career was, in some respects, kind of similar to what happened with Formal, really, because Formal was pretty lackluster in his final year competing in Call of Duty. He was just fed up and tired of playing online COD all the time, not not playing as many matches. That transition away from what was pre-CDL also affected SlasheR for sure, because SlasheR's very persistent, very determined. He kept with it for a few more years, and absolutely commend that, right? But if you look at SlasheR's all-time, when you compare him to the other ARs, an incredible talent for sure, and his records really speaks for itself, certainly in the early part of his career. I mean, he started in Black Ops 2. That's when he played his first LAN event through Ghosts. Then Advanced Warfare started to become pretty notable, won some events there. Black Ops 3, of course, became the world champion, and ever since he's been on multiple iterations of great rosters. I remember this as well, always sticks in my mind. This is a moment from World War II on Team Envy, as he was on then. It was Temp, Huke, Classic, and SlasheR. They ran back their Advanced Warfare team. This map, SlasheR dropped the kill record of the season with 55 kills. He was 55 in 19 here, and this game ended shortly thereafter. I think SlasheR died after this. Envy picked up the next 30 seconds of time, and that was game over. But this was a 55 bomb out of SlasheR against Arcetes, Clayster, Silly, and Brustini. There's a lot of rings on the other side of that stage here. And if this map had gone 250-249, right, this could have been a 60, 65, 70 bomb out of SlasheR, right? It was just that good of a map. So I think you can definitely argue SlasheR is on the border, if not still in the top 10 players of all time. I think he absolutely was a top 10 player a couple of years ago, with obviously Shotzzy and Dashy and others making progress, Huke getting their second ring. I think it becomes a bit more debatable. When you talk about all-time ARs, you're talking Clay, you're talking Formal, and then I think probably you're talking about SlasheR. As I say, you're talking Dashy, and then also Octane. But, you know, the SlasheR versus Octane debate is pretty interesting. They were great teammates for a serious period of time as well. To me, I think SlasheR was probably better for longer than Octane was, but as ever, intrigued to your thoughts in the comments below. Well, I'll just share what SlasheR had to say about this, because, yeah, as is implied, he discusses how the format of the league just really sucked the life out of him, right? And I think SlasheR's still got the ability and the talent to still be a force. Maybe not the force that he used to be, but still be better than he was in stage 1 of this year. But I think all these factors were kind of culminating, and he decided it probably makes sense to call it a day now.
I mean, bro, this is another thing. We scrim all this time, right? Like, back in the day, I used to scrim, and I was in school too, but it still was like, I had no time for anything with school and like playing. But you go into the weekend and you play tournaments. Like, we used to have a tournament on Saturday and Sunday. And then now it's like, bro, I scrimmed all this time. I played one match on Friday. I did warm-ups on Saturday and Sunday, and then Monday was a day off. So basically 3 days off on a week, like, because warm-ups are trolly. But then I went to the next weekend too, same thing, one match. And I'm like, bro, why the fuck am I playing 4 maps? We're a month into the game. Like, I played more matches or more online tournaments than I have maps back in the day. So it's just like, I don't know. I hate the format, to be honest. Do I see myself coaching?
So congrats to SlasheR on a legendary Call of Duty career. Hopefully he stays around in the scene. He was also important just from a community perspective, right? The SlasheR World League. He would not be opposed to giving his thoughts on controversial matters. And look, he's just been a crucial member of the scene for the entire time that I've been around watching competitive COD. So yes, wishing him the best in whatever he decides to do next. Of course, also one of the smartest players ever, right? He's got that degree in robotic engineering, which might be pretty useful at the moment. I don't know. So there's maybe options there. Could he coach? Could he be a very valuable asset to teams? Absolutely, yes. I feel like SlasheR's one of the players, if he was coaching, though, he would just want to get back in the server and do it the right way. But yeah, we'll see what the future holds for SlasheR. Maybe we'll get him on a couple of Dope Check shows as a guest from time to time. But with SlasheR stepping away, that means that the oldest player in the league, with Attach retiring and Clayster going over the last couple of years, is remarkably enough now Dashy. I think what's crazier to me is that Nasty is the second oldest player in the league. Now, that doesn't mean that these guys have been around the longest, because Tej, Kenny, and well, also Envoy and Huke, they played before they were 18. So Tej, given he's now back in the league on Surge, we think, he debuted in 2014. So actually not long after SlasheR debuted. So in terms of career length, despite the fact that Tej is somehow a little bit younger than those other guys we just mentioned, his career has been longer. So, you know, SlasheR was around for near enough 13 years competing. T just been around now near enough 12 years competing. Pretty much the same with Huke, Kenny and Envoy. Dashy didn't make his pro debut until a little bit later, but he is now the oldest player in the league. All of the top 3 born in 99, Dashy in April, Nasty in July, Skies in July as well. So yeah, pretty wild. I mean, these guys are the unks of the league now at 26. I mean, it's just not old at all. Like, it's kind of wild. I'm born in May 99, so I would be the second oldest player in the league if I was good enough to be a pro. So yeah, I don't know. Times move on, I suppose. And Dashy replies to it and gives his thoughts, right? So this, of course, Brady here on the Buccaneers, kind of saying, like, got on the last guard in some respects. So, like, I think Dashy's still, if he wants, he's got a very long career ahead of him. As I say, he's 26, right? Like, he's turning 27 this year, but he's still got easily several more years left if he's still got the motivation to do so. And also, as we said, Dashy's not yet been around a decade, right? He debuted in 2017. It still feels like he's relatively fresh, which is crazy because he's been around 8-9 years at this point. But yeah, it still feels like Dashy's kind of one of the young guns, despite somehow being the oldest player in the league. As I say, TJ's the longest tenured in the league, but he's about a year or so younger. As Dashy says, can't teach an old dog new tricks, Brother Terry. So yeah, what a day for the scene. The oldest active pro is now Dashy somehow, and well, that is likely to remain true unless somebody else makes the return, right? Could Clay make a return? Parasite was saying I might run it back in the scene, but if that is unlikely to happen, which it is, then Dashy will be probably the oldest pro until he decides to hang up the sticks, which hopefully is no time soon. So very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.